about you only children, but I'm pretty happy to be a middle child after watching this episode. This is the 2 Sentence Horror Stories After Show.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome, AfterBuzzers, to the 2 Sentence Horror Stories After Show. My name is Mia. I'm your host for tonight. And yes, we are live from Washington, D.C. I moved, so I'm doing this show right here out of this studio in D.C. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. I know you guys have been so patient, waiting for the show to continue, but here we are in a new city and you're still following, so thank you so much. We're gonna have a great show. I'm so excited. This is episode 107. The title of the episode is Only Child, and like I said, I am so happy to be a middle child because this episode was wild. So in this show, we're gonna go over cinematography, we're gonna go over the actors, the acting, the stylistic choices, the writing, the plot line, all of the good things. We're gonna get down to my favorite part, the theme of the episode, what we think maybe the commentary of this horror genre in this episode is about. And then I'll send you guys off with a nice little special segment. We're gonna have some fun at the end. So let's start the show. First off, I wanted to talk about the cinematography because that was my favorite part of this episode, and I think the cinematography might have actually been the best out of the whole series in this episode specifically. It was giving me Us vibes. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Jordan Peele, has made his directing debut in these past few years as this horror kind of master of the genre, and it was really giving me with the parents and the kid inside, which we didn't know at the time that he was kind of a little bit cuckoo. It just was really creepy, and it just gave me vibes like Jordan Peele. I don't know if they were inspired by this, but I'd be really curious to know if the director is a fan or the writer of the episode is a fan, because it was definitely up that alley. So again, the cinematography, I loved how it started off with this blue wide shot of the house, and then it kind of goes from the outside and it kind of just zooms in a little bit, and we see each room, right? So then we see green inside. Looking out, we see out the window, we see the mom and the dad walking by, and that's a green shot. Then we see the heavy breathing. We don't see faces, we just see the grandma with her cane, which was so creepy, and she kind of looks kind of psycho at this point. So we think she's the villain, which is a whole nother thing. We'll get to that later, but I also really like how they made the cuts. Were very much formed to make her look demented, right? Like they were quick cuts, and she was going down the hallway, and it was very choppy, and it made her movements look really creepy, which I think added to the effect of, again, making her the villain. And then we see kind of like the Mecca, no like pun intended, but we see like this shrine, right, of her family in Haiti, which is where the grandma's from. We kind of see this shrine in her closet, and then we see red, which I think is making a color choice, right? Because we see blue, we see green, and then we get to this shrine, which is the focal point, and it's red. Then, of course, they do like they always do in the show, and they're like, here's the title sequence, and we're like, what is really going on? And then, of course, it goes backwards, and once the episode starts, we see that the grandma's not actually the villain. And so getting into the story, like I said, the grandma's from Haiti, which I love. One thing I just love about the show is that it's all about diversity, culture. We see so many different things, going on here with the family and different types of people. We've seen queer couples, we've seen Asian representation, we've seen Black representation, we've seen mixed representation, we've seen everything on the show. I absolutely love it, and now we see someone from a different country, so that's really awesome. And voodoo, I mean, that I haven't seen anything. Maybe since Coven in American Horror Story. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's something I've seen. You guys are a really good fan base, so you guys watch a lot of horror. Maybe you can tell me the last cool voodoo movie or TV show you've seen. But this is the first in a while that's centered around voodoo, and I really, really liked it a lot. I think it captured it really well. I think sometimes that can be cheesy or overdone or even disrespectful to the culture, but I thought this was done pretty well, in my opinion. If you have a different opinion, please let me know. I love seeing you guys in the comments because you're super active. But yeah, again, I thought it was a really good take on it, and I like that she said the grandma made the specification, their ancestors, not ghosts, and so you can see that's really rooted in family and all that stuff. But before we move on to storyline, I want to give a quick shout out to the one, the only AfterBuzz TV. Yes, that's exactly what you're watching right now. It is an amazing, amazing platform. We call ourselves the ESPN of TV talk, and we basically give you all the TV after shows you need to watch, from sci-fi to rom-com to dramedy. Any show you watch, we have an after show for. We're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify. So if you're listening, be sure to give us 5 stars. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and give us, comments and all the love. We need it to keep going. That's how, we keep doing what we do. So again, thank you to Keven and Maria for having us here, for having me here in DC to host the show. And just to all of our viewers who are out there watching and supporting. We love you guys. So thanks again. Now, moving on to storyline. Kind of freaked me out a little bit. But I think, I think of this, I think it was the second episode in 2 Sentence Horror Stories, but I remember when, I can't think of the name of the episode, but when the guy's crawling up the stairs, his movement was so creepy, and, it was something that I hadn't seen in a horror movie before, because, there's so many monsters and spirits and ghosts and zombies and all these creatures, and they all have, movement is a big thing. That's one way to scare the viewer, right? And I think this show gets really creative of inventing new ways to scare its viewers. And so that was one thing I really, really remember from that episode that stuck out to me, is his movement up the stairs. And for me, in this episode, the thing that kind of really freaked me out was when the grandson got demented or got possessed, and then his eyes just blinked, right? And they did this weird lizard type thing, and the grandma saw him, was freaked out, and then later she's doing the research and she finds that it's kind of the lizard people. And so when it does it, I think it did it 2 times. It rolled back in his head. That was so creepy. It was a really good stylistic point that we see throughout the episode. And it was just wild. And so I think too, I like the evil eye protection. That was a really cool aspect of this episode and this plot line. And then even just going back to cinematography, I think as, the story goes along, we see really specific, distinct cinematography and different camera methods. And so one thing I liked, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I liked when the grandma, again, was researching, what is is my grandson possessed? What's wrong with him? What are these spirits? Is the devil in my house? Whatever she was researching. They do a close-up of her hand on the mouse, and she's just kind of scrolling. And that built a lot of suspense. And it's just crazy how one movement can build, all this tension in a scene. That was really interesting to me. And then also another thing I love with cinematography is the fuzziness when the grandma, we learned early on, which this show does an amazing job with callbacks, and whether it's to character traits, whether it's to cinematography styles, they call back to certain things. And in this episode, it was her asthma. So when she would need her inhaler, things were just getting dizzy in her world, but they were getting dizzy for us. So as the viewer, we're looking at this camera and it's getting dizzying and it's fuzzy and we see this Gaussian blur and, we feel like we were in the grandmother's shoes, which I thought was really cool too. And then the shots got really tight too, which was interesting, I thought, when when the grandson is telling stories, when he's like, okay, I'm going to sit you guys down in the living room and tell you about my project that I'm talking about. It's my family history. All we see the mom's face and it's this tight. We see dad's face and it's this tight, and we see grandma's face and it's this tight. It's even tighter and it's zooming in slowly. And gosh, I think this is my favorite episode as far as cinematography. It was really good, so shout out to that. The only thing for me, I think, is it was light. So it was right at that scene that I'm talking about when he's sitting them down and telling them about his history project, that it's light outside when the grandson tells tells the mom and dad, this is kind of I guess, the climax of the episode. He's like, Mom and Dad, go outside. And it's light out. Clearly, we can see the windows, and it's light outside. And then he's like, go outside. And then the camera fades. I'm assuming it was commercial break. I saw it afterwards, so it wasn't with commercials. But it fades out, and we're back inside, and it's just the grandson, it's just grandma, and it kind of loops back to what we saw in the beginning of the episode before the title credits ran. And we see that it's nighttime, and I don't think any time has passed. It's not like he's held her hostage. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's just picking up, and then all of a sudden it's dark. And I'm like, does he control the weather too? Or was this just a huge discrepancy? I have no idea, but did that bother you guys? Let me know. I'm curious to know. Anyways, this is good because now we've gotten to themes, which is kind of the last part I wanted to talk about before we get to the special segment. But I realized I never told you guys the first sentence of the 2-sentence horror story. So I'll tell you now, which is perfect because we're going to go over the last sentence. So the first sentence when the episode started told us, "My grandson got his big, beautiful smile from me." And the last sentence was, "It never wavers on his face as he watches me die." So that's what this whole episode was based around, and this is perfect because now I kind of want to talk about the theme, because as we say every episode, horror is commentary on bigger themes in societies, whether it's good, bad, all that stuff. So I think this was a really, clearly on kind of, a surface level, it was about family, right? It was about ancestry, history, culture, but even on a bigger scope, it's about bringing that to a relationship and I think how you raise your family. And so it's interesting because you saw that it was an interracial couple. So it was, a black dad, a white mom, and they're raising this kid, and the grandma lives in the house with them, and, she wants him to know about his history, but maybe the parents don't want to raise him. Like, the dad says it all episode. What we don't know if he was possessed when he was saying this or not, but the dad is saying all episode, just because I was raised learning about these spirits and these demons doesn't mean that my son's going to learn about them. And so that was interesting just on generational differences. And especially one thing that cracked me up is when the mom was like, "We don't like to use the no word." I was like, girl, if you don't stop, like that was the worst to me. Personally, it kind of reminded me of that whole conversation of like, I know there was this huge thing going around the internet. What was that? Like, I don't know, maybe years ago. I don't even know at this point, but there was this conversation circling, and it was about like, participation trophies, and some old school parents, you might say, were kind of like, winners win. They get trophies. That's it. No other kids in the team should get trophies because they need to learn that hard work gets you first place, which gets you trophies. And then other people were like, if we're encouraging every kid, if we're making them feel good, we make every kid feel supported for just coming out to practice and playing in the games and just being a team member, that should be rewarded too. And so there's two different sides. I personally feel like I fall in the middle. I see both, even though, I'm just as empathetic and sympathetic person in general, I like to say. So I think we should all make people feel supported and feel like they're doing something good if they are participating, even as a team member. But I can see both sides, and I thought that kind of this episode with cultural implications kind of incorporated that idea of like, what do we teach our children? It hit home for me too, personally, because my grandmas were also in the house with us when we were raised. It was a full house. Literally, my life is full house. Like, both my grandmas lived with us growing up, so I can kind of see, I've never seen those conversations behind closed doors, but I can imagine my parents had to be like, okay, well, we don't want to raise our kids that way, and like, how involved should grandparents be? And I know I'll go through the same thing. I'm in an interracial relationship that's serious, and it's kind of those conversations of like, how will we raise our kids? So it's a lot of interesting topics. I want to hear all of your stories, whether it's personal, whether it's about horror, in the comments below. Tell me all those themes that you think you saw. And I do want to say one quote that the grandma said. She said, "Your culture is his culture too." I love that line. I thought it was great. But there's kind of everything I wanted to talk about as far as the episode. We'll leave you with this amazing segment I have planned. It's a special segment, and it is 9 horror movies inspired by real life events. It's actually based off of an article from Mental Floss, which is a great site, but I'm not going to read 9. I've read one before. I think I did Nightmare on Elm Street. In a previous episode, we talked about this, but for this episode specifically, I am going to talk about Amityville Horror, which was a 1979 film. Clearly, at AfterBuzz, we talk about TV, but wanted to talk about film for a little bit. And the premise of this movie, if you haven't seen it, they've done remakes. I think they've done one remake. It's probably, at the state we're in with pop culture, probably they're going to make another one within the next few years. But I think there's one, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm talking about the original, though. So the premise of this movie is that a young family moves into a house, and there was a murder committed there not long before it. And, just basically weird experiences and occurrences are going on, and they're terrifying. And that's just kind of the premise of the movie. And the real life inspiration is actually based on a book of the same name Amityville Horror, and it follows the paranormal events that occur in this home. And it actually happened to a real family. So it happened to the Lutz family, and they claimed that they were terrorized in this home. Here's a specific address if you maybe want to visit. I think this happened in New York, right? 112 Ocean Avenue is the address that they moved into in 1975. And, unbeknownst to them, 13 months before that, this guy named Ronald DeFeo, I think is how you pronounce it, he brutally murdered his family. Yes, 13 months before this family moved in. And the family that moved in claimed that, they saw green slime on the walls. Weird. They saw red-eyed pigs. Don't doubt it. Maybe I do a little. And they just saw a lot of just weird things going on. And I'm curious about that because I wonder what a guy murdering his family had to do with pigs and with green slime. I really want to know. I think I might go read a few books on this, or maybe I'll go do some research myself, because that is interesting as to how that ties into the family dying there. I wonder, I personally thought maybe you'd see some of the kids running around that got murdered, or the wife or something like that, but I guess it was just other weird things, so who knows. But that's that, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Mia Brabham. You can find me on Twitter at HotMessMia. You can find me on Instagram at Yours Truly Mia. Don't forget to follow AfterBuzz. It's an amazing, amazing platform that gives you all sorts of TV, like I said before, that you might love to watch or might maybe want to start a conversation about. So get in the comment sections. Have a good time. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you for the season finale next time. Bye!
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.